Welcome to the Cow Emporium. Today we're going to start an experiment with some worm castings. We're going to see how they do with seed starts. So I've got a tray here set up. I'm going to make a mixture of 0%, 5%, 10%, and 20% worm castings with a potting soil mix. And we've got 3 different kinds of seeds that we're going to try. Some red cherry tomatoes, and some butter crunch lettuce, and some green cup bush beans. And we'll stick them in here and we'll just do a little test and see how the seeds start in these different mixtures. For our experiment, we'll be using this Pots and Plants Premium All-Purpose Potting Soil Mix. In the ingredients, it contains some peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, and there already are some earthworm castings in this according to the label, but we'll be adding our own. These are homemade earthworm castings. The base material for this were just dry fall leaves off the trees, and we had some pine shavings. That was the bedding, and then we just garden produce that didn't get used over the winter went in here little bits at a time. These were just screened them yesterday through a 1/4-inch sieve, and there's still live worms in here and cocoons and whatnot, and it's nice and moist, but this is the worm castings we'll be using for this experiment. So we're seeded. I ran out of bean seeds on the very last row, so there's 2 radish seeds in each of the very last trays on the outside for comparison, just so we filled this tray up with seed. So I guess now we'll just put it in a warm spot and wait to see what happens. It's day 11, and this is what our trays are looking like now. We got really good germination on everything. It all came up nice and healthy. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of differences immediately. Everything was pretty well, came off the gate pretty much the same, but everything was nice and healthy. The one disappointment was beans. We had a bad batch of beans. They're not growing in the garden. And subsequently, the beans that I planted in here, all those are empty. So we only had 1 bean grow, and that was in the 20% worm castings. So that's for what it is. That's what happened. I'm going to pull that bean out of there, and I'm going to thin the lettuce because I got the lettuce a little bit too heavy. But everything looks pretty much the same. The only subtle differences I can see right now, the 0%, the radish leaves are kind of curly. And then as you move towards the 20%, they're not quite as curly. And my biggest radish so far is in the 20%. And then some in the 5% are, close seconds. But the 0% seem to be the smallest out of the radishes, but that's not a big enough group of radishes to know for sure. Yeah, right now it looks like my 10% is the best for the tomatoes. And yeah, the lettuce, the 20% seems to be not quite as good for the lettuce right now. So I'm going to thin the lettuces out. I lost a couple lettuces over the past couple days. I've been top watering, and that's probably not a good thing to do. So I just wanted to show you guys what everything looked like here before I thinned it. And we'll pull that bean out and we'll give it some more time and see what happens. After thinning, here's what my tray looks like. We'll check back in a few days and see what's going on. It's June 23rd, day 23 of our worm casting experiment. For the past week, the tray has been out in the greenhouse just because it's been a little bit too big to have in the house. Yeah, so the 0%, Everything was remarkably healthy, but my radish is in the 0%. You can see there, my whole radish row did get a little dry, but it was equally dry all the way along. There's no radishes forming on the 0%. A little tiny one forming on the 5%. Another little one, tiny one forming on the 5%. But look at this guy here. That's 10%. Here's my finger. It's almost as big as my finger. And in the 20%, we have another one almost same size. But if you go over on the end, we've got another radish here with nothing on the bottom, but the tops are nice and healthy. So this is the 20% worm casting radishes, all the way down to the 0% worm casting radishes. The lettuce all looks about equally as good. Nice healthy green leaves. The only thing I noticed is on the 0%, there is a little bit drying out of the leaves here, but that might just be because it's at the outside edge. That's not a big enough sample to really draw many conclusions from, but everything's very healthy. And the tomatoes are all nice and healthy, but the 0% are a little bit smaller than the 20% worm casting radishes. I'm going to try and figure out a way to measure these objectively, and I'll get back to you in a minute. So it's really hard to show just the difference in growth here. So what I came up with, I've just got a straight edge here, and you can see I'm going to go with metric. The straight edge I have across the top is 14 centimeters, just a little over 14 centimeters on both sides from top to top, like 14.2 centimeters, I think. You can see the difference in height. There's our 0%. There's our 5%. Here's our 10%. They're almost touching the straight edge there. And then we come down to our 20%, and they're about the same height as the 5%. Definitely the 10% is the best with tomatoes, and the 0% would be the worst, with the 10 and 20 being about the same, or sorry, the 5 and 20 being the same. So there's the best and the worst side by each, 10% being the best and the 0% being the worst. Neither of them are a slouch, that's for sure. I'll just swap it around so you can kind of see the height differences here. I thought I'd weigh the containers just to see what the weights were in grams. I don't think the results have anything meaningful to offer, other than there might be a little bit more water in some than others, but there's quite a difference in weight. They were all watered the same inside the tray, but I think the height and the volume of growth on the top is about the best way we can ascertain how much growth is here. So my observations here, I would estimate that the 10% worm castings has about 20% more growth on it than the 0. So that would probably be a good amount to go with in your potting mix. So in conclusion, the results didn't seem apparent right to begin with. It's sort of a slow burn sort of thing, I think. The plants were all remarkably healthy. I didn't have any trouble with them. I had one bean that grew out of the bunch that I took out, but other than that, everything was nice and healthy. I didn't have any trouble with disease or bugs. They were in the house under lights to start with for the first couple of weeks, and then the last week they were out in the greenhouse. And it's time for me to get these plants out of here and stick them in the ground. So yeah, worm castings sure seem to work with the seedlings, and 10% is a great place to start. Thanks for watching.